Tres.
Good afternoon, teacher. This is the group 7. We are going to present 3 different scientific articles about gamification in education. The group is made up of Mayra Chasiluisa, Gabriela Chuquitarco, Monica Huachi, Alexandra Miranda, and Joel Sarabia. Let's start. General background. The first article is entitled The Utilization of Duolingo to Improve the Speaking and Listening Skills of Junior High School Students in Pekanbaru. The reason for this study is that teachers have been implemented techniques, media, and learning resources in teaching process in schools. These resources are still not optimal because they are still limited to handbooks issued by the Department of Education that don't represent all student learning styles. And as a sequence, students' motivation and learning outcomes are low. The second article is entitled Vocabulary List Learning Supported by Gamification, Classroom Action Research Using Quizlet. The reason for this study is that acquiring L2 vocabulary has been challenging for students, and the succeed is often related to learner autonomy. Learner autonomy refers to the learner's ability to self-direct their own learning process to achieve learning goals. Learners don't develop on its own, so to facilitate the growth of learner autonomy in vocabulary learning can use online websites and mobile applications. The third article is entitled Kahoot, a digital tool for learning vocabulary in a language classroom. The reason for this study is that the use of vocabulary terms is essential when learning a language. Learners cannot distinguish between different uses of a word because those words have different meanings. For example, the word date can be a noun and also a verb, and that word have different meanings. Acquisition of these vocabulary terms is important, and students must be able to communicate using these concepts. Thank you.
The main objective of the first article was to identify the level of effectiveness of using the Duolingo application in order for students to improve their speaking and listening skills. The authors of this article were Siti Nia and Pami Pami. The main objective of the second article was to discover the level of effectiveness of the Quizlet application as a tool for students to acquire vocabulary outside the classroom and increase their autonomy. The authors of this article were Bodi Waluyo and Rama Bakoko. And the main objective of the third article was to explore the use of the Kahoot platform as a digital tool for learning vocabulary in an English class. And the authors of this article were Edison Llerena and Carlos Patricio Rodriguez Hurtado.
State of the art. The main theorists and theories that contributed to this research in the first article about Duolingo was the following: using technology, Hicks, to use of Duolingo, Rumen, Baselinow, to use of technology-based devices in learning, and Herlin. About the article 2, Quizlet, acquisition of vocabulary terms, Kinahan 21, the interactive response system, Wang 2016, technology-based games, Abrams and Walsh 2014. In the article 3 about Kahoot, deliberate vocabulary list learning, Yamamoto 2014, semantic mapping, Coin and Sharififar 2013. Gamification in the learning process, Kingsley and Grabner Hagen, 2018.
I'm going to describe the methodology used. The first study was developed in a junior high school students in Pekanbaru. The participants were 58 students in 8th grade, and the type of research, it was a quantitative research. To collect data, the researchers first collected the materials needed for the research. Then they applied pre-research observation, then interviews and a pretest to determine the students' knowledge before using Duolingo application. After that, they use a post-test. In addition, they used a Assure model, which is a guideline for teachers to develop lesson plans. Finally, in order to analyze data, they used inferential statistics, which are meant to help researchers to draw conclusions or draw inferences from the data. The research study number 2 was carried out in Kuala Lumpur University in Thailand. The participants were a class of 30 students from second year class. And this was a action research, specifically a classroom-based project research. To collect data, the researchers first apply a vocabulary pre-test with multiple choice questions in order to determine previous knowledge of the learners. After that, in the treatment, they used a Quizlet, and finally a post-test along with a survey with a Likert scale. And finally, in order to analyze data, they use descriptive statistics, which are meant to help researchers to draw characteristics from the data. And here they can use graphs like bar graphs. And finally, the research study 3, which was employed in Universidad Técnica de Ambato. The participants were a total of 105 students from different faculties and careers. This was an experimental research. To collect data, the researchers first applied a pre-test, then in the preparatory phase, also they used the Kahoot application. After that, they asked students to fill the self-assessment rubric to get some qualitative information. After that, a post-test and a survey with a Likert scale questionnaire. Finally, in order to analyze data, they used a descriptive statistics and also a bar graph. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about the treatment. For the first research about Duolingo, this part showed the results of a research carried out at junior high school of Islam Terpadu in Pekanbaru with the 8th grade students as the sample. The description. The treatment was carried out by using the Duolingo application after the subject pretest to determine some skills such as speaking and listening. A post-test was conducted to determine the effects of using the Duolingo application, whether the students get improved scores from before or not. Data and analysis was carried out when the research stage from the preparation of the data collection to the pretest has been carried out at the final stage. This research has a control and experimental group. The control group was made up of 31 students in class A1 and 27 students in class A2. and the experimental group the same students of the junior high school students in Pekanbaru. The pre-test result was carried out with the preparation of questions that were made to provide a preliminary test to students in order to determine the students' ability before using the Duolingo application. In the post-test result, another test was made at the end of the application in order to know the result of using Duolingo app, in which we can notice the effectiveness of using this tool in English class. And the result show as an increment in abilities that were can be seen in the results. In the second research about Quizlet, um, the current study explore the learning through the use of the Quizlet application. The description. A classroom-based action research design was employed in this study, and this study created a two-circle action research design in which the first circle is between the first to the 5 week and the second circle to the 6th to the 10th week. Well, through the first to the 5 week, learners use the gamification, and in the second cycle, they use the gamification support, and the word research was carried out in 10 week, and at the end they take an evaluation test. This research has a control and experimental group. The control group is made up of 32nd years students between the 18 to 20 years old students. And the experimental group participate the same students. In the pretest result, students learn the weekly vocabulary list in-house, relating meaning, images, and words without the use of Quizlet in vocabulary test. From the first to the 5th week, and at the end they take a test to know the scores. In the post-test, students learn the weekly vocabulary list, but in this case with the use of Quizlet to the 6th to the 10th week, and they practice spelling, writing, listening, and pronunciation. And at the end of this experiment, they take a test in which we can see the improvement of all the skills. In the third research is about Kahoot. The purpose of this research was to study and explore the use of this online app as a tool used for teaching, learning vocabulary in the English class. Description. The use of Kahoot at the end of every unit was carried out with the teacher in order to evaluate all the topics that they learned in the whole unit, and then the teacher asked the students to write a diary with the purpose of have a weekly self-assessment, and at the end they had a final test. The control group are 35 undergraduate students between 20 to 22 years old, and the experiment group, two groups of 35 students. In the pre-test, students were asked to write a weekly self-assessment diary in order to have a qualitative data and to note down their learning reflections on the course. In the post-test result, we can know that according to the post-test, participants increased their meaning vocabulary scores during the final test, and we can know that there was an improvement in their scores and skills. Thank you.
After looking at the research about using Duolingo to improve the speaking and listening skills of junior high school students in Penk and Baru, it was concluded that the use of the Duolingo app was useful to improve two important skills as listening and speaking. Also, that it is necessary to motivate teachers to use the phone and the educational contents, and the author suggests that further research needs to be done with teenagers and the use of Duolingo.
Discussion and conclusion about the research study 2, Quizlet, as another tool for the educational process, is also useful to learn vocabulary. Students show a big interest in using this app. Gamification application provides a feature that allows teachers who assign gamified learning.
We can conclude that Kahoot is a tool used for many years in education that shows an increment of motivation and satisfaction for learning in students for learn vocabulary, especially with university students and students from different ages in the language class. This application promotes a good environment in the class.
As a group, we conclude that gamification is the application of game design in the class to catch the students' attention and change the traditional way. In this review, we understand the effectiveness of Kahoot, Quizlet, and Duolingo as examples. According to our researchers, gamification plays an important role in the English learning process.
Did this gamification strategy really work in the teaching learning process? Yes, gamification was used in many English classes with the objective of improving skills and combining them with motivation. These tools improved the class environment and changed the students' view of learning. Thank you.